Just to be clear, I did give him some idea of what the questions were, but we haven't talked about it beforehand. And so he also has permission to be completely honest about all of it. So, welcome to the Navigating Baby Loss podcast.
Oh, well, thank you.
So, we have been married for almost 35 years, and through those years, there have been a lot of changes. And I feel like we are completely different people separately and together than we were in the very beginning.
Absolutely.
But certainly our loss was a defining moment in for a lot of things. For any of my audience who doesn't know, our story is that we had two sons. They were 5 and 2 at the time, and we had stillborn twins at 32 weeks. So, we did have another daughter a year after, almost to the date, but our life was really busy, and I think we agree that we grieved very differently,
Mhm.
and sometimes we didn't weren't always on the same page with it. You, I would imagine, had different coping mechanisms than I did, so maybe we'll learn about some of those today. And so I just thought it would be good for you, in honor of Father's Day, to talk about your experience, your memories, and what the changes have been in the past now 25 years since it happened. So take us back to the moment that you found out that we lost our babies. What do you remember the most about that day?
Well, the day that we knew for sure, I was working in the emergency room, and the staff had said you came down and were looking for me. And you were visibly upset. And I remember the doctor I was working with pulled me aside and said you were in the physician's room and to go back and talk with you and see what's going on. And we kind of thought something had happened because you had had a fall a few days earlier and had noticed you hadn't noted the movement that you had previously. And you were very concerned about that. And then you'd gone into your sonogram and had the appointment, and they had confirmed that the babies had died. And I mean, we were both heartbroken at that time because we had names selected, we had all sorts of ideas on what we were going to do with twins, and it was a horrible moment. And I don't remember when they decided that you had to have a procedure because of that and have the C-section. I believe it was the same day.
No, remember they sent us home.
Okay, that's right.
They sent
Because
us home to tell the
you had
boys.
to go home, and I remember you just being so distraught because you had these two babies in your abdomen that were dead, and how you were carrying them, and that, they thought maybe you would just pass them on your own. And I remember you just being completely out of
Hmm.
your mind because of what were you going to do? What happened if we passed these at home, and how were we going to handle this? And our youngest son didn't really understand too much of what was going on. And our older son, he was so excited when his sibling was born, and he was looking forward to having twins, and he kind of understood what was going on. But, the kids at 5 and 2 really just don't understand the emotion that goes into an episode like this. Because as a family, we really had not had a loss this close to us. So
Yeah.
was kind of unusual for all of us.
Yeah, I know. I knew I wanted to come home and see the boys and get whatever I could ready, not
Hmm.
knowing what the next few days were gonna bring, but then, and they really wanted it to just happen.
Hmm.
But I mean, they told me I could wait a month, and I just couldn't do that. I couldn't carry dead babies for a month. There's no way that I could do that and be normal for these kids. So we went in the next morning and then were induced for 3 days.
Right,
And
right.
then at the end of the third
Unfortunately,
day,
yeah, unfortunately, you just
I
were never
never,
able to just
mm,
have a natural delivery, and
no, that
this
was
was the
never,
same. And I remember you being so distraught about having to have a surgery
hmm
to remove your deceased babies, and that you were going through this for nothing. And
yeah.
I just remember you saying it over and over again. And it didn't matter what I could say or what I could do, it did not change how you felt. And it was I felt very helpless, I should say. It's
hmm
just, it was nothing I could do.
No, there was nothing anyone could do. I didn't even want to be in my own body.
No.
What were the hard, I mean, besides that, what were the hardest days after that? Like after coming home?
Well, again, you had just had surgery, and you, you're emotionally upset, you're physically uncomfortable, and we have to make arrangements for a funeral.
Mhm.
And it was just so hard because you just were really, you were out of your mind. I mean, you were just so emotionally distraught, and family couldn't help. Um, I remember my mother was just, her coping mechanism is to just block it out and not discuss it and go on. And your mom had been through something like this, but they didn't ever talk about it. So they both really didn't offer any support.
Mm-mm. No,
And it was hard. We were on our own and
just
trying,
us.
you know, decide how we wanted to handle this. And we had people telling us that there was no reason to do a funeral, and, that we were doing a bunch of things that were unnecessary. Why would we do that? Why would we do a funeral and a headstone and a burial? And, people just didn't understand how we felt.
Yeah. How did you cope with your own emotions while trying to help me because of the state I was in?
Well, unfortunately, with my profession being in medicine and emergency medicine and EMT paramedic, I encountered tragic situations many times, and I had learned how to handle and manage my emotions in those situations. I know in the ER, hearing a mother scream because her child had passed, and you get kind of cold to those situations. And I remember how I tried to justify what happened by the fact that there was some malformation with the development of one of the two children, that I felt that this was just the Lord's way of preventing us from having an even more difficult situation if the pregnancy had gone full term. That, you know, it's, to me, I just tried to justify it. Right or wrong, that's how I handled the situation.
Hmm. Well,
Um,
we all do.
we all do. And
I
of
think
course, as
I
a
tried to look
father,
back to see what I did wrong to
right.
justify it, how I could have changed it or how what where my fault was because
Well, I remember you always blamed
I
yourself.
felt responsible. Yeah.
Yeah. And 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 a father, I don't have that physical attachment.
Hmm.
I watch you develop and I watch, the excitement, and we go for the sonograms, and we hear the doctor's reports, but you have that movement, you have that feeling, you have all the things that happen with a woman while she's pregnant, and you feel that bond.
Hmm.
And I didn't have quite that attachment. But
Well, I think the father's loss is of the idea of it and the
right,
dreams of what
because
will be.
we had talked about how we were going to set up a nursery and how we were going to manage having
Hmm.
two babies at the same time when we'd already been through one at a time before and knew how taxing that was.
Hmm.
So yes, it was hard, but
Hmm.
um, I just coped with it more trying to justify.
Yeah. Um, did you ever feel like you were grieving differently or maybe even wrong from the,
Well, again, I didn't have the emotional
hmm
outburst, or
because
not
I
necessarily out.
judged your grief.
What's that?
Because I judged your grief.
I'm sure you did, because I didn't have that outward emotional appearance.
Hmm.
Um, again, I try, even with you, I tried to say, it's not your fault. There was deformities. They weren't healthy. They passed because they weren't healthy enough to stay alive. And I know I kept trying to say that to you and to deflect your feelings that it was your fault,
Hmm.
because you were very distant for a long time.
Hmm.
Um, and there was nothing that I could say that was going to help.
Yeah.
I remember
What?
you being bitter, bitter
Yeah,
at me
that
the
was,
whole time.
yeah. Like, what changes did you see? Like, what did you see in me? How did I change throughout that?
Well, you were very bitter. You were very short, angry. Um, again, just in how I was responding, how other people were responding.
Hmm.
Um, people see you now, you're smiling, you're supportive, but then you were very
Hmm.
isolated and very bitter,
Hmm.
angry. I mean, you were angry.
I was really angry.
It
Yeah,
was hard for you to even enjoy the boys.
it was hard.
Yeah. And I could see it, but of course I can't. We had no resources to go to. And, at that time, everyone just says, you just got to live with it and go on. And that's how things work. And that's
Mhm.
not the right way to do it. It wasn't for you.
Well, it's not what you want to hear. Yeah.
No, no. I remember you used to be so angry with
Mm.
people
Yeah.
because they weren't supportive for you and they didn't understand what you've been through.
Yeah. And the moms I work with now feel the same way. It's a very common feeling.
Yeah,
It's really hard. It's hard to feel misunderstood in your own life and with the people in your life.
right. I mean, even now you still struggle with it.
Yeah, I will forever.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'll never understand it. I'll never be okay. And I love my life.
Right. And, and I always try and say, we wouldn't have Madeline if
I know.
they'd have survived, because then what would our life be like? And I always try and say, things happen for a reason, and maybe the reason is that we needed, a healthy daughter instead of uh, you know, twins that were going to be extremely difficult to take care of and may not have survived long, even if they did go full term.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
that
It's
doesn't
all
help you,
the unknowns. Yeah.
because again, you had that fall and you blamed yourself for years
Hmm.
that you caused them to die because you fell, because you tripped and fell.
Yeah. Well, it's easier to blame yourself than to accept that there's no reason.
Correct. Correct. No, you're right.
Um, so how, I mean, you kind of touched on that, but like, what did you struggle with the most about like the frustration that you couldn't help me?
That's it. I mean, it was so hard to try and help you because there was nothing I could do to help you.
Hmm.
And it made our relationship very challenging. Um, you know, and it made not only our family, but our parents and our brothers and sisters. You didn't, it was hard to be around any of them. Um, you didn't want to be around anybody, and I I was doing my best to protect you and try and support you, and nothing I did was helping. And that was very hard.
Was there ever a time when you thought we might not make it?
I don't know, because the one thing that we've always had is the ability to communicate and ability to talk. I, you know, you've been through a lot, and I understand you've been through a lot, and I was very patient trying to work with you. I do know that, you know, there were times when I'm like, this is just not going to work. If she can't learn to accept this, then how are we ever going to continue on? And um, you know, at nights, when you go to bed crying and you don't want to talk and you don't want to hold me or be anywhere near me, or you know, it was very difficult.
Mm.
Um, as far as whether we would ever not get through it, I don't know. Because I understand what you've been through. Uh,
Hmm.
but even when you were pregnant with Madeline, it was very difficult because you were so stressed that
Scared.
something was going to happen again. And all that stress, I was the outlet. I was your punching bag when you didn't feel good, and that was very difficult. And
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, that was not an easy pregnancy.
no, no, and it, so you're now, over a year that
Hmm.
you were very distant
Oh,
and
yeah.
didn't want to talk to anybody about anything with the pregnancy.
Mm-mm.
Um, and you really didn't want to talk to me a lot.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
hard.
It was hard. It was hard. I guess I never thought that we weren't gonna make it, but I just didn't think we'd ever, I was pretty sure I'd never be happy again.
No, I know. And you weren't for years, even after Madeline was born.
Mhm.
And I know you tried to do some counseling, but the person you were working with really didn't connect with what you were dealing with. And um,
Hmm.
you never really recovered from that. I mean, there were some other things that were exposed that had nothing to do with the pregnancy, that may have also added to some of your stressors and grief, but no one ever really got down to your feelings with that loss.
Hmm. Yeah. What do you think helped us stay connected through it to get to where we are now?
Well, communication. I mean, you and I have always said we're going to yell at each other at night and then we're going to have a few quiet moments and then talk it out.
Yeah.
Um, it was communication, and sometimes I had to learn my boundaries and step back and not always say what I thought, but by the end of the day, we would always communicate. There was nobody sleeping on a couch
No.
because there was fighting going on. Um, you'd yell at me, I might yell at you, and then we'd have a quiet time and then start talking
Hmm.
and express our emotions and our feelings. And we didn't always understand how the other one thought, but we at least talked.
Well, I think we finally got to the point where we didn't have to understand how it was for the other person.
No, and I was never going to understand why you felt the way you did,
Hmm.
because I didn't have that feeling of guilt and responsibility.
Hmm.
Like I say, I always tried to justify it as there was a reason beyond our control that this happened.
The medical
Yes,
professional. You.
exactly.
Mhm.
Yep.
When did you see things shift for me for the better?
You over time, you had more time with the kids. And Madeline, as she grew, you adopted her in, and I think, even now you want to bring her tighter because of that loss and your feeling of her being, your answer for the loss of the children, and you struggle because you don't have that tight of a bond with her as what you would hope. Um, but you got into some counseling with people who let you express yourself a little more, and you express yourself. You finally got to the point where you opened up on how you feel, because for
Mhm.
a long time you wouldn't tell anybody how you felt because nobody would understand, and you didn't feel that anybody would
Yeah,
understand.
yeah, I got tired of trying to,
No,
I
but
got tired of feeling like an oddball out because I
yeah,
was the crazy
yeah,
grieving mom.
yeah. um but you finally got in with a coach or a counselor. I don't
Kathy,
remember what
Kathy,
Kathy was for
is the
you.
coach. Hmm.
Yeah, and she asked you some very difficult questions.
Well, and she gave me permission to, that it was okay how I felt. No one ever could do that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, no one ever could tell me that it was okay to feel shitty.
Yeah,
Like I just needed to, it was okay to feel awful. It was okay to be mad. It was okay to be angry and feel awful. But in order to have the life I wanted, I could sit in it, but then you have to move out of it. And that was the
right.
piece I was missing,
Mm-hmm.
is I didn't know how to move out of it. And everyone was trying to just make it better and just, and I was trying to forget about it. So I got busy. I
Right,
got real busy. I opened a business.
right,
The kids, I dove in with all the things of the kids. The house was spotless. I was cleaning and sewing and all
right,
kinds of stuff every spare minute so that the grief wouldn't catch up with me.
right,
And then Kathy, my coach, was the one who finally was like, it's okay. Like, you don't have to do that anymore.
right,
And you can be pissed off, but then what are you gonna do next to make
right,
your life better?
right. Because unfortunately, my opinion and my input was never gonna
Well,
help. Even now when, no different than when I offer my input on clothes and paint colors. Um, you know, my input is not what you seek. You seek my support and my support and backing for your decisions, but what I can offer you is not always what you're seeking.
well, because I think men in general, like, are fixers. And
Hmm.
you just wanted to fix me and you just wanted to make it all okay and help me understand. And I didn't want to be fixed. I wasn't ready.
No.
I just needed you to sit with me and just say, this is terrible. I can't believe this happened. But I think you were afraid to do that because you didn't want me to go even further down you want you were afraid
Well,
I'd go further
yeah,
down the spiral.
yeah, there were many days that it was difficult to communicate as it was, and to try and support that and keep encouraging you to do that. It was not the direction I thought we needed to go, because I tried to get you to accept it and move on, and you just couldn't.
Mm. So how do you see me now as the mom and the person that I have become from this experience?
I mean, you still like to communicate, and of course, doing this program
Mhm.
you're doing, I think is still counseling for you.
Mhm.
It
Yes,
still
it is.
gives you an opportunity to communicate your thoughts and feelings. Um, and I think feel better about what you went through by being able to help others.
Mhm.
I know, it's been many years that you've been working on this and planning things and trying to come up with a way to be able to support others that you encounter through social media or wherever you come across people. And I think it's still counseling for you just as much as it is for anybody else. But you look at your lifestyle now and your interests and your ability to accept things that happen a little differently. I mean, you're the one that's used to say things happen for a reason, and for a long time that wasn't acceptable. Now you think that something else is going to come out that's going to be better.
Mhm.
Something doesn't go the way we think it should.
Yeah. It still doesn't make it okay, but there are I think it made me appreciate my kids a lot more. I think it made me a better mother. I think it made me appreciate like not worry about petty things in life. I think it made me have a better appreciation of life and my life.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
And you've been through a lot, and we still have we still have them in our lives, as far as when we hang the angels
Hmm.
on the top of the Christmas tree every year, and we go down and clean the headstone every year. They're still part of our lives, and they'll still part of our memories and our hearts. But we've learned how to cope with it and how to manage that and how to accept it and move on.
Not it's not so painful anymore. It's more of a
No,
fond memory than a painful one.
yeah. I don't even know if it's fond. It just is,
Yeah.
it's a memory, and I still think about how things could be. And when I come across people with names like, oh, that could have been our daughter.
Hmm.
That name, because I remember how excited we were when we came up with their names.
Yeah.
Um,
We
we would talk about that for hours,
yeah, we were
and
ready.
they're still part of our lives,
Hmm.
even if we never got to hold them at home. Um, you know, we still we still have those memories
Mhm.
for that short time. And I think you've learned to accept that role and embrace it.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it took a lot of work.
Yes, it did.
Mhm.
A lot of work, a lot of patience, and in the beginning, a lot of hardship.
Mhm.
Um, you know, for emotional support, physical support, relationship support. It was all very difficult in the beginning or after things happened.
Yeah, it sure was.
Yeah.
So one last question
Okay.
is what would you say to a dad who just found out their baby died?
Boy. Support your wife, support your partner.
Mhm.
Um, grieve with them, let your emotions out. We men don't have to be the stoic rock to, be the one that becomes the punching bag for the emotions of the partner. We have just as much in a pregnancy as
Mhm.
the mother does. Um, and we should be able to express ourselves just as well. But we also need to be able to support our partners as best we can, um, and be the sounding board. Allow them to grieve, allow them to be distant for a while and understand that this is just emotionally horrible. It's a horrible event.
It's devastating. Yeah.
And to be tolerant and be patient and be accepting and be there, be there and available to help with whatever needs to be done.
Mhm.
Um,
What do you wish a new lost mom knew about how the dad was feeling? What would you tell her about her partner?
well, I would just say, make sure you talk to them, make sure you express how you're feeling. Um, because again, being silent and distant doesn't help. Um, in most relationships, the husband wants to help as much as they can and to help, because we
Mhm.
care about our partners and we want them to be happy. We want them to enjoy their life. Um, but we also want to help in a moment of grieving, no different than the loss of any other family member that we have. Um, and we need to be there, as a sounding board, um, sometimes as a punching bag, um, and to be supportive and try and hear out what's going on, because many times it's just a matter of having someone who will listen and someone to try and listen, hear what's going on
Mhm.
so that the mom can express her feelings and not keep them in and hold them in and dwell on them and just let that fester to the point that it's out of control.
Mhm. It's good advice.
Well, I try.
You've had a lot of learning.
I've had a lot of learning. Yes, I have. 35 years of getting hit side the head when I don't do something right.
Well, you're the best dad ever, and I'm so thankful. I would never want to go through this with anyone else. And it was amazing what you did during that time and all that you've had to put up with since. And
But
I'm
it
just so
it was
grateful.
extremely difficult. But look at what I have now. That's better than it. Our
Yeah.
relationship is better than it ever was because we worked through it.
Yeah.
We listened to each other.
Yeah. And no one else wants our baggage.
No, no, nobody does. And nobody will understand except for you and I because we talk.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I love you.
I love you too.